Ooh, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Harmony and Code and Compliance. Today, we're going to be focusing on navigating the intersection between engineers and privacy officers. Lucky for me, I have some special, excellent guests to help me navigate that intersection. So, really quickly, I want to go around the room for anyone that doesn't know my guests. I'm going to go ahead and let them tell themselves or tell a little bit about themselves, a minute or two. So I'll go ahead and start with Jay. Jay, if you want to open the room for everybody, and then we'll go around the room.
Sure. Hey, I'm Jay Everett. Currently a senior privacy engineer and product manager at Microsoft. Prior to that, I was at Twitter back during the pre-Musk era. And I've been in privacy first as a lawyer for a number of years, and then moved over to the more technical operational side the past 5 or 6 years. And love privacy and happy to be here on this call.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kay?
I'm Kay Royal. I'm the Global Chief Privacy Officer and Deputy General Counsel at Crawford & Company. We are a global claims processing company. So if you can imagine submitting a claim on something, whether it's your roof leaking or a cyber breach, anything like that, other than health insurance, we handle those claims. So I have to tell you, I'm in a very interesting world now, having worked for a lot of startups for many, many years. This is interesting to be in a publicly traded company that is based in the South. We've been around a long time.
Yeah, you've come from an interesting background as well. You started out as a nurse, right?
I did. I started as a nurse before I moved into being a lawyer. And people always ask, how did you make that transition between the two? They're very different. To me, they're not. Privacy is a helping profession. We protect the company by protecting the people whose data we have. And so I still look at it as a helping profession. And I teach privacy law at Arizona State University College of Law. So I keep my finger in quite a few different pies.
All right, a little shameless plug there. I love it.
Shameless plug.
And Safa?
Yeah, well, glad to be on with both of you. Kay and Jay, you both have such great backgrounds here. My name is Safa, though, Program Manager for Customer Privacy Operations over here at Transcend. I was previously at GoBrand, so got to be at GoPuff and all their subsidiaries at very exciting time at the company, kind of back in the 2021 era, post-COVID. So lots of stuff happening with instant needs delivery. Very exciting time to be over there. That's where I got fully into privacy from there. So was able to join the privacy team from ground zero, basically, and scale up from there and outwards to globally. So got to, deal with everything from the CCPA to making sure that we were compliant from GDPR perspective. Really needed a solid tool too. I was not a very large privacy team, worked with a couple of other great folks over there, but really I was the global privacy wrangler at that point. And was processing many DSARs, needed ROPAs to remain in compliance, especially with GDPR requirements. Had a few different privacy tool solutions. Nothing really worked, so ended up with Transcend, thankfully, thank God. Had got that, was so impressed by the tool. I guess I drank the Kool-Aid and I came over here because I loved it so much. So get to work with folks implementing basically privacy programs, utilizing our tools all day, every day. So that's great. And prior, I was a paralegal, have my background in applied mathematics, which was a lot of geospatial technology. Knew I wanted to be somewhere in the legal field, but definitely around privacy. I worked at a large public law office for a while, doing basically data analysis, very large public law office, and kind of moved around there doing different kinds of data and forensics for a little while. But then finally got, full into privacy, and now I'm here. So great to be on.
That's awesome. That's impressive as well. All three of you are very, very impressive and very diverse, different backgrounds, which is why I love this industry. So with that being said, in the words of Dr. Phil, we'll be right back. No, I'm just kidding. We'll keep it right here. So let's go on to the first question. for the day if I can get this thing to work right. So, Jay, we're going to kick it off with you. Um, this is around addressing common concerns and challenges. Can you identify some common concerns and challenges that privacy officers and engineers might face while seeking to achieve their own privacy goals? And I know you have such a unique background coming from where you came from and now working as a privacy engineer.
Yeah, I mean, I think really there's some commonality in the problems that both those looking at it from a legal standpoint and those looking at it from a technical standpoint face. I think the main one for me is engineers really want to push products to production as fast as possible because especially these days with AI and all of that, there's kind of a rush to get things out the door. And so with that, they don't want to see privacy as an impediment to achieving their goals. So, the real challenge is explaining one, making sure that privacy is introduced early into the development process because I mean nobody wants to be here at the 11th hour about to release something and then privacy swoop in and say, hey, we actually got some serious issues. You've not considered the GDPR, CCPA, or something, and they're having to make changes because if you're having to go back and redevelop something that you've already written, that's going to take a long time, and you're excited to get it out the door. And that's really going to make privacy look bad, although it's better than releasing something without those privacy impacting. With releasing something that didn't take privacy into effect, but is not the best. So really, the better solution is to introduce privacy early in the process. So that way, when they're working on development, privacy is being considered all throughout their code design. And they know, hey, we've got to get this done before we can release it. So you're not coming in at the 11th hour. That's been considered throughout the process. And that generally achieves a better result.
To that same point, before anyone wants to add in before I move to the next question, do you see a shift in obviously engineers are a little different than everybody else, and privacy engineers especially are a little different. They think differently. Do you see a shift in people, going into that direction of privacy engineer, and how do you feel about that, the entire process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where privacy engineers really can help, right? I mean, I think if you have an attorney involved early on, they could potentially help as well. But having somebody that has a technical background that can actually sit through and look at. I mean, attorneys are with me also during the reviews, and they're very important. But I sort of act as the interpreter in between the engineers and the privacy attorneys in our reviews. So because a lot of times engineers will you can't the worst question you can ask an engineer is there any personal data involved in because they just may or may not know what actually personal data is, and then you're asking them to sort of classify and make a legal determination on something that they may not be able to do. Some of them may be well trained in privacy and understand it, but a lot they haven't gone through a privacy review, so they don't even know what to look at. So really looking at their data flow and understanding what data is being collected, I think that's where privacy engineers can really help, is understanding what is going on from a technical spec, and then be able to communicate with the attorneys to make sure I may be able to advise on a good privacy design, but the attorneys really help with understanding the ins and outs of GDPR and CCPA and other privacy regs to make sure that, and as well as our contracts with our customers, to make sure that, we may be okay from a privacy standpoint, but from a regulation standpoint, is there something that I might have not considered? So I think that's sort of the harmony between privacy engineers and attorneys, our privacy officers, is that you're early on in the process, you can kind of provide that interpretive layer between software engineers and attorneys to kind of fine tune the privacy issues and help the engineers bake better privacy into their design, but also be able to sort of provide that consultative layer for privacy officers.
Yeah, agreed. And you can see that it's evolving. Obviously, the privacy's been around for a long time, but the landscape of it continues to change. And having engineers early on in their career kind of learning both sides is only going to benefit companies that are trying to build out privacy programs as it continues to evolve and become more and more relevant. So, anybody else on this topic before we move on to the next question?
I have a way of explaining privacy by design to engineers that I work with that seems to work. Typically what happens is you have an engineer or a product team that comes to you right the day before they're going to launch it or the morning of they're going to launch it. They're like, hey, look at this wonderful widget we built. And you'll be proud of us because we put up the 10-foot walls and the razor wire and the motion sensing spotlights for it. So it's clear, right? And you're like, no. You look at the widget and they built the widget on someone else's land and they're all going to be arrested for trespassing. I said, what we would prefer you to do, if this will pick up a demonstration, is come to us and say, hey, we want to build this widget. And you take a couple of weeks and you look at the things and you're like, you know what? Your plans cross on someone else's land. Tell you what, give me a couple of weeks. Let me go get the permits for you and come back and I'll tell you how you can build it or we can get the permits for the other person's land so you're not in trouble. And by the way, treat me as the home building inspector. As you build your widget, I want to come inspect the foundation, the plumbing, the electrical. I need to know every step along the way that you're still building this widget by these plans under the permit. I said, and when you're done and you finally launch your widget, you can go, yay, we're not on someone else's land, or at least we have the permit. And yes, then I still want you to build the 10-foot walls and the razor wire and the motion sensing spotlights.
I like it.
Yeah, I think just the very last thing I'd add into that, and I think that's a really great point too, Kay. A lot of times folks are thinking like security versus privacy, and there's kind of like that fine line that we got to choreograph, and there's definitely overlap. But the razor wire is necessary for protection of data. But really, what does privacy mean? I think making that when you're in your organization and you're collaborating cross-functionally, because privacy is completely cross-functional. It's a completely cross-functional sport. There's not one body in your org that is not going to have privacy touch it.
Right.
Just understanding that security and privacy, yeah, we go hand in hand, but they're different folks.
And privacy is not near as sexy as cybersecurity is, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. We're bringing the sexy to privacy.
That's right. We are.
Yeah, I think too, like I know we need to, you got, I'm sure you have a slew of questions, Cameron, too, but there's one thing on this slide too, I just kind of wanted to call out a little bit too. I think as privacy professionals, like we love our profession. Usually folks who are in privacy actually like what we do. And that's something that's kind of cool. You get to nerd out, you get to talk about really neat things that you're excited about in the industry, but also it can get kind of personal. And the way that this slide is phrased, where it says, seeking to achieve their own privacy goals, I think that I'm guilty of this too. It's something you kind of have to check yourself on that, like, are these your goals or are these kind of going along with what the business goals are too?
Yeah.
Like Jay was saying earlier as well, you don't want to be the person blocking anything, and you're trying to keep the business rolling while at the same time you're protecting the business, and keeping those privacy goals. And this is the black letter of the law, privacy. The way that we should be doing it might not necessarily be how you discuss it with, your higher ups, in the way you're going to be approaching those rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. It's always a sort of pick your battle situation where if you're a privacy absolutist,
you're not going to go far.
Exactly, you're right. Yeah.
Agreed. So, Kay, how have you successfully addressed these kind of challenges in your work today?
Well, one is making sure that I build the relationships. So that is a very big part of being successful in privacy, is making sure that you build the relationships and that people trust you. They trust that you're not saying this just to hear your own voice or to prove your own point. You're saying this because you're looking out for what's best for the company and for the products. You want people to buy them. You want them to be legal. As a startup company, you don't want to go sell your company and lose half your valuation because you collected data illegally. So you have to build your credibility and you have to build your relationships with people, but then always being honest with them. Sometimes they don't understand, and I'm not going to say sometimes, they never understand the legalese. You have to be upfront. You have to be honest. You have to say, hey, there's this obscure law in China called the Personal Information Protection Law, that if you violate this, there could be some significant repercussions to the company and to you. When it comes to GDPR, everybody seems to go, oh, fines, fines. It's not the fines necessarily. It's you might be prevented from doing business in Europe. So breaking it down and being upfront with them of what are the risks and the benefits, but also keeping in mind that you're working for a company that's looking to make a profit. Whether that profit is money or that profit is staying in business as a nonprofit, you're there to make money. There is no benefit without taking a risk, and you have to show that you're a partner. Learning how to speak the lingo also helps. I don't know if I can show it here. I keep a CISSP for dummies on my desk. And sometimes I use the wrong words. My husband's in IT. Sometimes I use the wrong words just to irritate them. But once they hear you using the language that they speak, like opportunistic TLS or something like that, then they're like, oh, okay, she's not just another lawyer or another privacy person that's just blabbing at me to hear herself talk. She actually understands what it is that we're trying to do. So that's how I've addressed the challenges, not to mention that I keep a very positive outlook. I very rarely put hits out on any of my coworkers. I don't pull the chair out from underneath them. Stay positive.
Sounds like good relationship advice as well. I mean, it works in all of those things. That's why it's so important. So I
It
love that.
does. You're not there to tear anybody else down, and you're not there to build yourself up. You're there to get the product out the door and keep the company making money.
Everybody wants to feel like they're a part of a team, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And in a company, in a business, in a relationship. Absolutely. Jay, Safa, anything on this one before we go to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo pretty much everything Kay said. I mean, collaboration in building those team relationships is 100% how you solve these challenges, and becoming, and I'm sure Kay is the same way. I mean, I want to see the cool thing that they're building go out the door. It's not my desire to prevent that cool thing from going out the door, because hey, as she said, we're all in the business to make money, and if you are sitting there just preventing anything going for the sake of taking some real privacy hardline, that's not great. So, but if you build those relationships, then you can insert your thoughts early on, and they're going to. You're not going to be looked at as a privacy traffic cop, which is the worst thing that could happen.
And you've hit your mark when you get that Teams message or Slack message that says, can you come to room 315 right now?
Right.
Right.
We don't want to use Teams though. Teams is they're getting some bad press right now, which is great.
You walk in the door to a meeting you were never called to, and nobody is surprised you're there. That's when you know you've hit your mark.
Yep.
Yeah, completely agree with everything that's been said. Honestly, it's privacy is about translation, and honestly, like just building relationships. That's like, you can be happy all day reading legislation, how it's being applied in the courts, but at the end of the day, honestly, it's between legal, engineering, product, it's hitting every single org in your business. And the way I like to think of privacy is like, yeah, there's the challenge of there's all these things we have to consider when we're wanting to ship it now. But let's be the enablers. And exactly like what you're saying, Kay, Jay, like if folks, you already have a relationship with those folks, like they're going to come to you. Like you're not being the blocker, like you're the enabler, and you're going to work with them to make sure that you're supporting that team to achieve the goals that they're trying to get for the business. So
Yeah, all great points. And Jay, when you were explaining the relationship coming from, being in law and then moving over into privacy engineering, it almost sounds like you're that guy. I don't know what it's called, the guy they send in to interrogate or talk to both sides.
I mean, that's what I hope to do is, I can certainly talk the talk with lawyers, but also really trying to build those relationships with the engineers. And yeah, a lot of that is just being able, and I mean, Kay is smart to have that, being able to, have that tech talk with them, because if you're speaking their language, then one, you're going to probably find out a lot more because they don't know what they don't know. So
Right.
being able to speak their language helps pull out what there could be.
Yeah. And it also helps too when you have curious, eager people that want to learn and grow as well. That's also helpful. So this is for everyone. What would your advice be to others facing similar challenges?
step into those product meetings that might be public, but you weren't necessarily invited to. It might not have much to do with privacy, but it completely does, because that way that you're understanding what's going on in that department, particularly, especially if you're working with a company that's like a B2C, making sure that you're just kind of walking in and you get to know those folks. That's the most important. It doesn't have to be a completely privacy focused meeting in order for you to show up. A lot of times it's just for you to understand how are other teams functioning right now? What are those teams' goals? Because at the end of the day, everyone's goal is the same. It's really enabling the business to move forward, and understanding what other people are working on and what their pain points are and their KPIs to move that business forward. Kind of knowing it before it happens is prevention. Prevention is what we want to do, and making friends that way, I think. So.
I agree. I say that we're not the office of no, N-O, we're the office of no, K-N-O-W. So it's knowing your role, it's knowing your expertise, it's knowing the product, but coming with knowing also means learning. So if you're walking into a company fresh and you don't know, don't throw your weight around citing laws and what needs to happen and what doesn't need to happen unless you understand the tone of the company, the culture of the company. Are they risk averse? Are they really innovative? Are they driving hard to a particular goal? Because you don't want to be seen as someone, the little boy who called wolf all the time. You want to be able to establish your relationships and your credibility. So I can't stress enough that, and we're all saying the same thing. You've got to partner, you've got to collaborate, you've got to build the relationships, you've got to build the trust. And Jay said this earlier when I laughed and I said you wouldn't be somewhere long. I quite often get asked about people transitioning to privacy, whether they're someone new to it, whether they're, an experienced attorney, they want to move into privacy. And one of the things I tell them is you've got to be flexible. The kind of, and I'll say an attorney, the kind of attorney that's not going to be successful in privacy is the one that's going to be inflexible in their thinking. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be creative, because privacy is such a murky gray area. Despite all the regulations that we have, it is so murky and so gray that if they want to do something, there's probably a way to do it. You've just got to figure out how to do it among all of the laws. And usually it comes down to transparency and consent, which nobody likes to do. And so it's a case of just making sure that you're creative and you're flexible and people see that you're there to help solve problems, not get in the way. Now, the biggest challenge is being in the room. As I said, one of the biggest marks of succeeding is that you're invited to the room, even if nobody else knows that you are. It's hard getting that seat in the room when they're having conversations and they're building things. So you have to build that relationship and have them understand that if you're there from the beginning of a project, or the idea, or even the concept, you might actually be helpful in designing pieces of the product or the widget or whatever it is they're using, because you're a person first. You might also be one of their consumers, or if it's a B2B, you've been with other companies, you might understand what they're looking for. So
Mhm.
show your value on multiple fronts.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, great points made all around. And I would echo everything just said. And especially the part Kay just mentioned about um, showing value outside of just privacy. Because I mean, a lot of times I'll be looking at a design, and there won't be a big privacy impact, but maybe like I'll ask something like, is there a way to turn this feature off? Because maybe people don't want to get notifications all the time, or something that really is more of a user experience type thing than just a pure privacy thing. So I think showing that value is great. And then I mean the point Kay mentioned about flexibility. I mean, you have to live in ambiguity and privacy because, yeah, I mean, most of the time I don't have a lot of, I mean, a lot of times I'll be looking at something and I don't have a great answer to the question because I have to think about it and figure out a way to
Mhm.
solve that. And have talked to other people about, hey, have you seen this before? Because I mean, so much of what, just to transfer over to when I was practicing as a corporate attorney, if you ask me a question about indemnification or limitation of liability, I could probably give you a really good answer very quickly. But if you're asking me a question about privacy, it's nothing that it's something that is probably, unless it's something like very clear under the GDPR about how long to keep data or something like that, it's going to be something that I'm going to have to sit there and think about. So, a lot of times I I I I tell my wife, I'm like, it's not that every question that I get, not that what I'm doing is extremely tough, because really at the end of the day, a lot of privacy is common sense. Be nice to others and don't
It
do things
is.
with their data that's shady.
Mhm.
But it's also very tough because I'm being asked things that there's no clear answer on, and you've got to really use your judgment to figure out how it fits within the confines of the regulatory scheme. And it's just good for the company and our users.
Yeah, 10
Yeah.
years ago, I was replaced. When I was leaving company, I was replaced by someone who had absolutely no experience in privacy. And so I overlapped the person to review their answers, be on the calls with them. He was wrong every single word out of his mouth. But the company loved him because he gave them answers like that. There was no, well, if you do it this way, then you need to do ABC. And if you do it that way, you need to do XYZ. His answer was always either yes or no. And I'm like, but he's wrong. Does HIPAA allow you to do this? He'd say no. And I'm like, well, he's wrong. HIPAA does allow you to do that. They didn't care that he was wrong. They cared that he gave them an answer like that. And I'm like, if you have a privacy person that can give you a hardcore yes or no right off the bat, they probably don't know enough about what they're doing to
Right.
be able to tease more information out of you to figure out what the nuances are.
Yeah. I think also it's one of those things where it's like as we get older, thinking before answering something becomes even more important because well, it shows that you're actually thinking about it. You're thinking
Yeah.
about what you're trying to say. You're not just trying to give a generic answer.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with that. That's funny though. People like yes men, people like yes
They
women,
do.
and they I don't know.
Well, I
Nobody
also
likes.
reported to a litigator once, and this goes back to what Jay was saying. He would get so frustrated with me because his life turned on an and or a the or a
Mm,
comma, and he would replace entire paragraphs of something I would write and say, is this correct? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, how can I replace entire paragraphs and still be right? I'm like, it's privacy. And he could not live with that ambiguity. You've got to be comfortable. You've got to thrive in the ambiguity.
I don't know why that's funny. It's just funny.
Yeah.
Uh, either the let's go on to another section. So fostering effective collaboration. we'll go ahead and point this to. We'll go to Kay on this one. How important to your understanding is collaboration between privacy officers and engineers?
Oh, it's critical. If it's the engineers that are coding and designing the fundamentals of everything you're doing, if they're not getting what it is that you're doing, then you've got a complete miss for product development. They may not have to speak the same language. I could not go in and code. They could not
Sure.
read a law. Well, they could. They probably just couldn't understand all the law in the context. They could read it. It's just not easy to understand legalese if you're not a lawyer. So we might not speak the exact same language, but as long as we know that we're there to collaborate and we don't try to actively avoid each other, which privacy officers don't actively avoid anyone. It's going to be the engineers trying to avoid us because they think that we're going to slow down their processes or we're going to make it 10 times more complex. And so making sure that they understand you're there to collaborate. And what I usually wind up telling people is, okay, here's the thing. If what I'm telling you to do seems impossible to you and you can't do it, please come back and tell me that, rather than trying to just not do it. There may be other solutions in place if you communicate what it is. If you say the solution I gave you doesn't work, come back and let's come up with another solution. And that's usually where the rubber meets the road.
That's a good point that you made there. Between you two, or even you, Safa, have you guys been in a company that not necessarily has a privacy program and you're building it from the ground up? I would imagine that like engineers tend to be a little bit more, they like to be on their own. They like to do their work. I don't, not all engineers, but a lot of them are kind of, they like to do the work and they're not very outspoken, I guess, compared to like how you would be, Kay. So that, I imagine that's got to be kind of challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the most challenging aspect of, I worked at a startup, and they had privacy lawyers, but did not have, an actual privacy program, I would say. They were trying to create one and they were doing the right stuff in trying to create one. But I mean, the key thing there really was engineers had not been, they were coming to privacy late in the process and they had not been, basically educated on the importance of coming in and looking at privacy early in the process. So I think that providing that education really was the biggest part of building out a privacy program. Is like establishing that relationship between engineers and privacy, and letting them know what you are and what you do. Because a lot of times, and you can kind of partner with security to build those relationships, because security is ahead of privacy. From engineers know that, hey, we've got to consider security, and they're used to speaking with security. So if privacy partners with security and hey, security, can you help me introduce me to these engineers? I think that's an effective way of building those relationships. But yeah, I mean, just everything Kay said, those relationships are critical.
Yeah, very much. So gonna keep going here. Got about 10 minutes left, but Safa, could you share some strategies that may have worked in fostering effective collaboration in your experience?
Yeah. I mean, so this is also coming from like a non-lawyer perspective, where I'm working between engineering and lawyers and products, and I refer to engineering a lot of time. Product will overlap there, in order to like operationally move privacy through and build out the program too. And I think that it's kind of like something maybe we don't talk about a lot too, where you are really the translator right there. And I think that we a lot of times talk about, oh, the lawyers and oh, those engineers, and you don't really put like, okay, there's individuals here who are really working towards their KPIs that have been set for them to, again, move towards a specific business goal. And a lot of times engineers, especially for privacy, engineers are like, okay, I just got told to make this blue button work and I don't agree with the way this is being done. I'm very capable of making this work, but it's going to cause a whole lot of other problems. So if you're meeting them, or you're meeting these people right exactly where they're at, like, yeah, frustrating, you have an opinion on this too, like I'm there to work with you. Like, and I think that a lot of times we also talk about the, engineering wants to move forward. Okay, like I've been told to do this thing, we've got to get this done. I know how to do it. And then privacy comes along, but also you have engineers who are like very privacy forward, like, beyond a lot of privacy professionals, very privacy forward. And might even want to go like kind of above and beyond in some instances too. And I think that I've definitely run into that. And I think that's almost more of a difficult situation too, because a lot of times there's kind of like a moral understanding of the way that privacy works too. And that's kind of, it becomes personal to that individual. And being able to kind of sit down with folks who are thinking this way and being like, I'm hearing you out. One thing that I loved, one of my VPs told me one time, is compliance is a story. You do the best thing that you can do. You're in a great seat too as an engineer. You can do maybe you can't do everything, but if it's going to keep the business moving forward, you can kind of have your little flourishes in there that might be just slightly more privacy friendly than not doing it, and might not affect like the actual outcome of the business goal, but it would be a little bit more privacy forward and privacy friendly. So making sure that you're really, compliance is a story to folks who are like, launch forward, Google tag manager, throw it up there, we're fine. And then the folks who are like, I'm not gonna allow this to go out, basically. Kind of stand by your guns there, I guess. And I think that that's really important, to kind of be like, everyone has their story here, and not just be like, engineering's a blocker for X or Y reasons, or in terms of privacy goals, but really working with those folks and being like, we're at the end of the day, we're both in this company, and companies need to make money, or they're nonprofit, they need to be remaining in business, like you're saying, Kay. So we got to move it forward here. So let's make up our own story together in terms of collaboration. And I think the really meeting folks where they're at, and literally sometimes just having those one-on-ones, are honestly like those one-on-ones with individuals who might have concerns, whether it be very pro-privacy, or why are you stopping this? Like, why are you even asking me about this? For privacy questions, like just sit down, have a conversation. It's more important probably than trying to collect 500 ROPAs. Just having that one conversation with that one engineer. So.
It's like that vegan family member that shows up at the Thanksgiving dinner. You got to talk to them. Just talk to them. Don't avoid them. Let's learn why. No, but I agree. I think that's a great point, because, I think it's up to us, people like us, to challenge old school minded engineers to open up and learn together to build a stronger privacy program for all companies. So.
And sometimes it just takes pulling them into a meeting room and going, okay, everything else out the door, on the table. What's wrong between us? Why can we not work together?
Yeah. Hopefully it's never
I've
like
done
that
that a
people,
time or two.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you know from experience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing is, at large companies like where I work, we have people sitting in between privacy legal, and engineers. But at smaller companies and startups, you're probably not going to have that. So what you can do, if you're a privacy officer, is set up like a privacy champion program, where you find engineers that are very privacy minded, and you make them a privacy champion, so they can advocate and evangelize privacy amongst the engineers. And then you have sort of that individual that is amongst their engineering friends, and can kind of spread privacy throughout the organization through championing.
Yeah, great point. How can teams overcome hurdles to collaboration? I think we kind of answered some of that previously, but if anybody wants to add anything else before the next question and section.
Well, also don't be afraid to have teams get together outside work. So you don't think about that often, to have that external collaboration, go out and have dinner, go out and have coffee in the morning before. get the teams outside work and have them get to know each other as people too.
Yeah. Like instead of talking about work, like just personal stuff, just like sports
Yeah.
teams and things like that. That's why it's so important to build that collaboration. Why do you think it's necessary to find a balance between privacy and innovation? We're going to move into finding that balance. I think it's very important because it's, technology is always changing. And sometimes it can get in the way of privacy because it's not the first thing in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we're all bumping up against. And as someone who loves technology and privacy, it's basically everything that we've said throughout this, that the business is ultimately not going to make money or stay in business if you're sitting there blocking innovation. So
Right.
it's really understanding that innovation needs to occur. So what guardrails can you put in place to ensure that you are respecting privacy inside that innovation? So doing all the steps that we've talked about, engaging with engineers early on in the process, and everything we talked about is, I think, the best way of making sure those guardrails are put in place, and still allowing innovation and technology to occur, because you need the business to stay in business.
Yeah. Agreed.
And often when it comes to innovation, you're looking at talking to other people, not just engineers, the CFO, the CEO, the other people who might have an interest in making sure the company can innovate and grow. So it's making sure you speak their language as well.
Agreed. Get everybody involved, top to bottom. Do you think it's possible to have both without compromising either?
I think that we really, when we approach this honestly, like, or at least this is the way I think of this, is that privacy shouldn't be a blocker. I feel like we are, we think about compliance so much. Compliance is these rules, there are these things that we need to comply with. We need to bend to these rules over here. Whereas, like, I mean, we'd be out of a job without innovation. Like, there eventually we'll figure it all out. And if we just stand still here and there's no innovation, great, we'll have something completely automated, and we won't even need to be worrying about really privacy compliance. The robots will take over, kind of a thing. But with innovation, I mean, like, again, like, I love technology as well. I think it's fascinating, and there's so many good things and bad things that can be done with technology as well. So thinking about it, like, even when like talking to engineers, like, frame it in a positive way, because like, yeah, I want to support engineers, I want to support product. Like, how can I support you? Kind of walking into the room like that first, like, how do I support you? What do you need? Like, privacy should be the enabler, really. I'm going to be here to make sure that whatever bridge you're building is not going to get burned down by a fire that might be coming from the south, and we need to make sure that you're going to be safe there. So whatever I'm doing, like, I'm doing it with your team in mind. I'm not asking engineering to like, hey, I realize how hard you work. Also, like, appreciate that too, and really want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, like, I'm fitting into your sprints. I'm not trying to block anything. Like, I'm here to help you, really, and help you continue with that project and continue to innovate as well. Again, it's all compliance is a story too, and it's all going to be part of that innovation. And that's honestly, that's the fun part of privacy, is keeping up with innovation and seeing how innovative the humans can be at the same time as, like, how do we, balance out privacy? I think compromise is a very kind of maybe extreme word to use here, just personally, just because, we move forward so fast, we don't even know necessarily what's being compromised. You might check all the boxes, but really, like, be the enabler and see how we can move forward.
That's good. Anyone else on that one? I just want to chime in on kind of where you piggybacking off what you were talking about, Safa. I just think it is like all of us, we're so passionate about being in privacy because it's interesting. It's I mean, there's so much going on every single day. There's breaches, there's new laws, there's AI generated Taylor Swift becomes, like, viral because, Congress wants to finally do something about AI generated photos. and not thinking about, well, what about all the other people that it's happened to that aren't famous? Things like that are just super entertaining and obviously interesting, but I don't know. It's a fascinating realm to be in. I just feel honored to get to watch the roller coaster, if I may. But let me see. Anyone else on how you have managed to strike a balance in your perspective? Maybe Kay or
I'm not
Jay.
sure it's a balance, but be willing to take a risk.
Yeah.
Privacy was never put in place to stop companies from doing business. Just like here in the US, HIPAA was never put in place to stop doctors from practicing medicine. So be willing to take a risk.
Mm-hmm. It's a life lesson too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, as Safa was saying, I think that, you keep, I didn't like the word compromise there, because I've seen what engineering and privacy are doing is more of a, collaborative effort than, an actual compromise. Yes, there may have been things that if I was a privacy absolutist, I'd say, hey, we've got to have it this way. But that's not my role. I see myself as a teammate of engineering, and I think our legal folks do as well. So I see it as a team effort to release that, and I don't look at whatever I'm doing as making compromises, or whatever they're doing to ensure privacy is protected as making compromises from an engineering standpoint. We're just trying to create the best possible product that our customers will use and trust.
Good points. I know this kind of this is the last question. How can the intersection of privacy and engineering intersect the catalyst for business enablement? Any takers?
I think
Yeah,
it's what we've already been saying. It's that we're here to be an enabler, as Safa has been saying. We're here to collaborate. We're here to be able to make sure the company can innovate and make money and stay in business and grow business. We want to see the cool things happen ourselves. So the intersection is truly the relationship and the understanding on both sides. It can't just be on our side. Engineering has to be, as Jay was saying, engineering has to be willing to collaborate with us as well, and see us in the right light. So I do truly think that a collaboration between us actually enables the business to succeed better.
Yep. Good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
Completely agree.
Yeah, echo everything Kay just said.
Awesome. Is there anything that any of you would like to add that we didn't touch on any of the questions, any of the content?
It's not easy.
Right.
Never is. The good things are.
We would be having a show on it. It's not easy. We're not trying to pretend that it's easy. It's gonna take saying something 100 different times, 50 different ways, over and over and over, before it finally clicks for someone, and they're like, ah, now I get it. And understanding the why. I mean, you wouldn't, like I said, you wouldn't be having this program if it was easy to do. So don't
And
get
right when it-
frustrated that you're banging your head against the wall.
Right. Once it clicks, it's changed.
It's beautiful.
And
It's
then you
like
got to keep
lights
going.
go off and there's fireworks and there's angelic music playing, and yeah, it's amazing once it clicks.
I mean, but it could also change though, in terms of we figured this out, but now there's something new, or now there's something, it's gone into a different direction. We got to adapt.
Yeah.
Which is good because
as long as the angelic music goes off, I mean, that's really nice.
Do any of you have any like soundtracks playing in your head when you're walking down the street? I wish that was a real thing. But anyways, thank you all of you so much for taking the time to do this today and to collaborate and talk about some of the hard stuff. This is a continued series, so we'll go into some deeper conversations on some different things. But thank you so much for being here and sharing your experiences and your expertise, and just for everything you do every day. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, thanks everyone.
Right,
Bye, y'all.